Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Creative Writing, Lucky number 13. Today we are going to be focusing, or refocusing, I should say, back on poetry. And some interesting things came up when I was writing a few poems today that I wanted to speak to before we get started. So, sometimes when I'm writing poetry, particularly, I was a big fan of poetry when I was younger, and I read a lot of great poets' work. And I was always struck by just how dense poetry can be with not that many words. So you can say a lot with few words, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And I always thought that poetry was supposed to be sort of epic, I guess, in a way, that you use sort of heightened language or particularly poetic language, I guess is a bad way to put that, but that you end up sort of boxing yourself into this has to be using my fanciest words, and it's got to be about some really deep, strong feelings. And I don't know about all that, you guys. As a younger man, I thought that was what was supposed to be, what poetry was supposed to be. And now that I have read a lot more poetry and a lot less, I should say recently, I have been reading a lot less classic poetry and a lot more just modern day poetry, I guess. And I've been struck by how free poetry really can be. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to make perfect sense. It doesn't have to follow the typical, narrative forms of beginning, middle, and end. You really have a lot of room inside modern poetry to be able to express what you need to express moment to moment. And if it all is sort of speaking on a larger thing, okay, sounds fun, but it doesn't have to either. So with that in mind, I tried to write some poems that didn't feel like poetry talk. And then sort of at the end, it kind of happened inevitably because I'm been doing poetry for a long time. But so this is my very jumbled way of trying to describe to you at home exactly where I was at and what I was thinking about when I was approaching my poetry today. Because I sat down with a blank page, and I don't typically write poetry from prompts like I have been doing in the fiction class yesterday. And that blank page was pretty blank for a long time for me today, you guys. So it even happens to me, okay? And I started to get nervous, and I started to go, oh man, what am I gonna write about for today's class? And then I finally just let go of trying to make it poetry, and I just wrote. And I think one of the more interesting things about poems is that they typically are not super duper long on the page. There are some fabulous epic poems, I believe they're called, that are many pages long. One of my favorites being Howl by Allen Ginsberg, a fabulous beat poet who gained notoriety in the 60s. And I remember reading that in high school. I remember the very first time I read it cover to cover. It's a very short book, and it's all one poem. This poem called Howl. So anyway, that's not typically the case with poetry. Poetry is normally a shorter form. And that's what I tried to explore today on the page. While not making myself have to rhyme and not making myself have to stay on topic line by line. Or at least I was trying to leave that open. I think I kind of did develop some topics. You'll see what I'm talking about when I share what I have written for you guys today. But I'm going to do the same thing because I hope this is working well for y'all back at home. I'm going to go through, after I read each one, I'm going to give you a breakdown of my thought process. And I think what I will do is I'll do that immediately after reading. I have 3 poems for you guys today, okay? 3 short poems. And after each one, I'm going to stop after the reading of it and discuss with you my thought process about where I was at and what happened. Okay, so sounds like we're ready to get started here. So my first poem is, let's count it. 1, 2, 3, only 4 sentences long. Okay. And the first 2 sentences are questions. Maybe that's something you can explore yourselves today too. Adding some questions into our poetry. And actually the last sentence is a question. Oh, wow. So this whole poem is 4 sentences, and 3 of those 4 sentences are questions. So I didn't have a whole lot of time for answers. So maybe you, the audience, can be the answerers. All right, here is the first piece, and I've left all of these poems untitled for right now because they are no titles really came out to me, and I don't really use titles as much in poetry. Let's see, I'm getting an update here, but luckily that is not going to stop us, so we're going to forge on ahead. Yeah, I see that I'm still live. Okay, good. I was just getting an update from Google Chrome telling me to update further, and I don't quite believe that because I've done a few updates that have not made things better for me, so I'm going to investigate a little bit before I do computer updates, especially because my webcam did something crazy after one. So anyway, here we go. Poem number 1, 4 sentences long, and then I'll discuss it afterwards. What should you say? What should you do when half's ready to go on and half are staying glued? Who knows what's true, let alone what to do? Okay, so there is poem number 1 today. And this poem was very much, I didn't have a concrete idea for what I wanted this first poem to be about today. And I just started, I would describe this as what some people refer to as a stream of consciousness poem, in that once the pen hit the page, I didn't really stop. I actually even wrote a 5th sentence when I was writing that I decided to cut out because it wasn't really very clear what I was trying to say. And sometimes that's really, really effective too. You could write a longer piece of poetry and then go back through and cut out a few lines that didn't work for you after you've written it and you've reread it. And that's called editing. And a lot of the best writers will all say that the editing process is where the real writing happens. A lot of people can just sit down and type away or write away and keep it rolling. And sometimes those poems have a really nice flow to them, but sometimes things get said that don't need to be said, or that maybe divert you off the path. And the poet wants the path to be a little more easy to follow, perhaps. So I was thinking about the state of affairs in our world right now, where it is very difficult to know what our next steps should be as a society, because there are a lot of differing opinions going on in the world right now. And so that's where these questions came up for me. And I don't have any good answers. I know it's kind of tense right now, but I thought it was important to acknowledge that we don't know, or I don't know specifically what we should all be doing next. And a lot of people I'm observing, a lot of people are walking around saying that they do know what they think we should do next. And I would say that those people are very valuable, and those opinions are very valuable too. But I also find it very freeing as a person who likes to know what's next myself. I find it very freeing to just admit sometimes, in these kinds of times especially, that, wow, I would like to know what I think we should be doing next, but I don't quite know right now. So that's where this, what should you say? What should you do? These first questions are not just talking about you, but they're talking about me, and they're talking about all of us, because it's hard to know what to say in these times, and it's even harder to know what to do in these times, when half's ready to go on and half are staying glued. So now I added in a little bit of a rhyme there. I couldn't help myself, you guys. When I feel a rhyme emerge, I try not to fight it. And when I want a rhyme and it's not coming to me, I try to just let that go and not force myself to have to rhyme either. But this whole piece ended up rhyming, which I wasn't expecting at all. But it was just kind of, as I was writing, I realized, like, oh, that would rhyme, and it makes sense to what I'm trying to say. So the final line is, who knows what's true, let alone what to do? And that's another question at the end here. And I still find myself struggling with what's true and what's not true in these times, especially because it seems like people are substituting their very strong opinions for facts in this particular moment on both sides. Okay, of where people are where there's tension, and I think it's important to acknowledge that man, it is tough in these times to even know what's true. And that word true is kind of a loaded word all of a sudden now, let alone what to do. Because normally I think most of us at least, learn about some facts, perhaps facts that we didn't know about how the world works, and then we adjust accordingly because we've learned a new fact. And that's where I was trying to get at with this final line of, when you don't know the facts anymore, the facts are so hard to figure out if it's more of an opinion or if it's more of a true tested fact. It's hard to know what to do then, because there's doubt about what is even What is even true in these times? So that's our first poem right there. I hope that you all at home would explore some questions that maybe you don't have answers for, just like I did in this piece of poetry. That would be my recommendation for your first poem today, is to use some questions and maybe explore questions that you don't have easy answers for. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our second poem. All right, this one is a little bit longer. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. And then it's got a really long run-on sentence for the fourth. So it still is only 4 sentences, but each of those sentences are longer than our first piece. And I kind of got on a roll on this one, so I'm going to read the whole piece for you all, and then I'll go back and I'll dissect it line by line and try to give you guys a better idea of where my thought processes were, and then I'll try to recommend a good way to move forward for you. Okay. All right. Poem number 2. It's strange to be defined by your past. It's not here anymore, and yet each of us carries ours into each moment. The present is rarely a clean slate. I suppose that there are those who repel the past like water off leaves, but a great many more absorb it, retain it, and drink from it. Okay. So this piece is on a very different topic, and it is about the topic of the past. Okay? I think for many of us, in my experiences with all of you at 7th Street and getting to know you all, I think that we all tend to do this a bit. That what has happened to us in the past comes with us into whatever present moments we are in, even when we're not thinking about it. And that's when I'm always surprised myself by sometimes when I have strong reactions, good or bad reactions to something, but it was very, very strong, where I become overwhelmingly pleased about something, or very upset perhaps. I often can think about, what is it that made me so happy about that or upset, let's say, and I can trace it back to something from my past that has shaped that moment in my present. So that's where I was. That's where my thought process was at the beginning of this poem. And in this poem, I tried to explore a little bit more imagery. Okay. The first line, it's strange to be defined by our past, is more of a philosophical statement. And then I explore that thought of, why is things that happen in the past still with us in the present? It's not here anymore, and yet each of us carries ours into each moment. And I was trying to get at this idea of, even if you have experienced something in the past with someone else that you know very well, that perhaps you're very close with, the two of you could have very different views of that past thing. And you both could carry them into the future or the present, and reflect on them quite differently, actually. Especially if you guys have, different statuses per se. Like, for example, if you did something at a job with your boss, you might have a very different memory of doing something in the past with a boss, and that boss might have a very different memory or perspective. Actually, is a better word than memory. Because of that relationship not being equal, your boss is up above you, and you're working beneath your boss. I thought that might be interesting to think about for a moment, that you can even experience the same exact things and your perspectives could be very different just because of, how the hierarchy of whatever relationship system you are in. Work relationships are one, but there are hierarchies within family relationships and friend relationships, and even peer relationships, which I would define as, having commonalities, but maybe not deep friendship. I've had many peers that I've run into in the realm of music, where we're not close friends, but we know each other's work because of music. So moving on here. The present. Okay, so that last line, and yet each of us carries ours into each moment. That's what I was trying to speak to there. The next line is, the present is rarely a clean slate. Now, this is something that I was not expecting to write today, and I really particularly liked how this line came out, because I think a lot of times we are constantly told that the present, your new present moment that you find yourself in is can be a clean slate, and I would argue that a bit, that while you can try to start from a clean slate, just mentally put yourself in the place of, okay, whatever past, whatever future stuff or whatever, I'm gonna just let all that go and try to start with a clean slate here in this moment. I think that the aim of that is very admirable, because a lot of us need a clean slate to get a fresh start. But to think that you can completely forget your past in the moment and trying to get this clean slate, I think is a little trickier than any of us might want to admit. So the next line is, I suppose there are those. Okay, so this is where I get into this imagery with the water. Okay, I suppose there are those who repel the past like water off the leaves. Now, this image came into my mind because today is Thursday, and I water my houseplants on Thursdays right now. I have them on kind of a 6-day rotation, so every week it kind of changes a little bit, one by one day. But today I just watered my houseplants this morning, and I watched the water repel off the leaves and then fall onto the soil beneath the leaves. And that image was very evocative to me today, and it ended up in my poem. So I'm speaking about the past that we all carry with us, and I'm comparing that with the way that water falls off of leaves and then gets absorbed in soil. I suppose there are those who repel the past like water off the leaves, but a great many more absorb it, retain it, and drink from it. Okay. So I'm trying to express the fact that while I do acknowledge that there are some people that don't bring a lot of their past with them wherever they go, there are some people that are just built differently. And I imagine that they experience things differently than I do. I think of myself as very much the latter part that I'm describing. A great many more absorb it, retain it, and drink from it. I think I'm very guilty of being that way with my past. Sometimes I get lost in thinking about my past because there's a lot that has happened, and a lot of my past has shaped who I am now. And so that's where I was trying to explore this imagery and also maintain the topic that I was talking about, which is our pasts. So anyway, that's my best shot at trying to give you guys a snapshot inside my mind. Okay, this last poem is a lot more disconnected than the first two poems. I would say that the first two poems both kind of fit into stream of consciousness poetry. This last one, I wrote a line and then I stopped. And then I stopped for a good little while. And then I wrote another line, and I didn't try to make sure that all of the lines made sense with the previous line, which is a very good exercise. So I'm going to read this for you guys, and we'll go through it line by line together. All right, here we go. Poem number 3. Hearts like well-worn leather, a small lamp in a coliseum of darkness, the timbre of a dead note. Echoes are a conversation. Which blue, which green, which breeze, which trees? Can they come with me? Okay. So this piece, I would say that this final piece, now that I'm reading it back and I have a little perspective from it from writing it this morning, I would say this final piece doesn't quite know what it wants to be yet. This poem is evocative. I hope that it makes you feel some things and makes you picture some things in your mind's eye. But I'm not exactly sure where I was going, and I'm not sure if I really got there either. But let's go back through this line by line, and I'll try to tell you guys what I was thinking. So the first line, hearts like well-worn leather. I have a belt that I wear most days, and I have had that belt for longer than I can remember. I don't even remember when I got the belt. It was so long ago. And it is a very well-worn belt. It's very comfortable, and that's why I still keep wearing it. But there are many times where I see that belt when it's not on me, and I look at it and I go, man, that is one beat-up belt. It is very, very well worn. And I probably should treat myself to a new belt one of these days. But I often find that there is a comfort in the well-wornness of this belt. And it reminded me of when you are sharing your heart with someone else that is sharing back their heart, and that there is a comfort there that almost feels like a well-worn belt, if you will. I know that's a really silly way to talk about something super, super lovely, but it's just, sometimes the best poetry brings together two things that you are not expecting it to bring together. And so I'm hoping that this line did that for you guys at home. The next line, a small lamp in a coliseum of darkness. Now, I have a small lamp. I have two small lamps, actually, in my bedroom on either side of my bed. And I like them, and I think they're fun and cool, and they also serve a function when I don't want to have the bright overhead lights on me in my bedroom, especially in the evenings typically. But I want to have a little bit of light on in my room. I will flick on one or both of those small lamps, and they don't put out a whole lot of light. It's just really gives me the shapes of the room, so to speak. And the last professional sports game that I saw before all this stuff got closed down was with my family at the Oakland Coliseum. I saw one of the last Raiders games with the Oakland Raiders because I have a family that are obsessed with the Oakland Raiders. And I don't really follow professional sports that much, but when I do, I root for the team that my family roots for. And so that's how I got roped into going to that game. And I enjoyed myself very much. And so I was thinking about how large the Coliseum is and what it must look like when it's dark, and how much light it would take to light up a dark Coliseum. And I was interested in putting those two things together, I guess. And I didn't have a whole lot more going on behind that line than wanting to explore a very small light source, like a small lamp, and what that might feel like and look like in a very large place of darkness. The timbre of a dead note is our next line. And I was really, I've been playing a lot of guitar recently, and I have I sold several guitars many months ago, and I recently treated myself to one new one. And it's a little guitar. It's got a nylon stringed guitar. And I normally play steel strings, which have a lot more bite and a lot more resonance. And they pick up electricity a lot better. And nylon strings are really, really sensitive to play. And I've been hitting a lot of dead notes because I'm not used to how sensitive I have to be and where I need to be exactly on the neck on this particular guitar. And a dead note is a note that doesn't ring out. And so talking about the timbre of a dead note, the timbre is kind of a way of describing music tonally and the way that it rings out or doesn't. So I thought describing or just posing the idea, these are kind of two opposites again, like the lamp and the dark Coliseum. The timbre or the sound and tone of a dead note, a note that doesn't ring out, I thought was kind of interesting. And then I kept on the musical train for a moment because you all know how much I love music. And the next line is, echoes are a conversation. That one I was also thinking about the Colosseum still. And also when you say echo, 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 something like that in a big cave or whatever, it often feels like your voice is continuing to talk. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. What if those echoes were your own voice trying to talk back to you? And that's where the idea of echoes are a conversation came in. And then I was outside when I was writing this, and I was kind of glued to the page. And at this point, I looked up. And when I looked up, I just appreciated how blue the sky is today and how brightly green the trees in my backyard were being shined upon by the sun with this backdrop of a blue sky. And that's where these last lines came from. And I don't really know what they mean, you guys, but I just wrote them down. Which blue? Which green? Which breeze? And literally, as I was writing which green, a breeze kicked up. And so I immediately jotted down which breeze. And then I wrote which trees, because I noticed that some trees were moving in this breeze that just had been kicked up, and some trees elsewhere in my backyard were completely still. And then the final line of this piece is, can they come with me? I am in the process of having to find a new place to live in a couple of months. And I've been living in this house with my cousin for 4 years, you guys. So quite a good little stint here. And I really appreciate our large backyard that has some old tall trees in it. And I think a part of me was writing that line because I know I'm going to miss them. And that's really all it is. You know, I wrote down really what was happening in the moment, which blue, which green, which breeze, which trees are moving and aren't, you know. And then I just thought, can they come with me? and the answer to that probably is not in reality. I'm not going to dig up these trees and take them with me. I'm not going to take the blue sky with me, but in my mind, my memories of this backyard and the good times that I've had in it can come with me, and they will. So, all right, you guys, that's my breakdown today of our 3 poems. Just to review, I would recommend exploring some questions, open-ended questions or questions you can't answer in your first poem. I would write about thoughts about your past in your second poem today. And then in your third poem, I would just try to write about what is around you wherever you're writing your poetry. And try not to think about it too much and just, record. It doesn't have to be super exciting, but those would be my recommendations for your own poetry from today. So hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are healthy and that your families are healthy and that you're staying safe. All right. I'll see you next week, Wednesday.